coming. Okay, so my talk is Clinton versus Trump, what happened? Let me just get right into it. So first of all, how many people here were pretty confident that Clinton was going to win this election? Decent amount of you. Right. And I felt the exact same way. On the day before the election, Mr. Staber, my gov teacher last year, and my sociology teacher this year, asked me in front of the entire class, David, who do you think will win the election this year? And I told him, in front of everyone, Clinton will win by 10% and she'll landslide the electoral votes. And I didn't just pull that number out of nowhere. I'm a very data-driven person. So for the past few months, I've been following polls, I've been keeping up with the updates, and everything seemed to just say, Clinton's got this in the bag. She's got an 80, 90% chance of winning. There's no way Trump's going to win. Technical difficulties. Okay. All right, I can manually do it for now. 538, 272 to 214. There we go. NBC, 274 to 170. And Princeton, 308 to 250. They all seem to just say, Clinton's got this. There's a few swing states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, maybe Florida, but she's got a lead, she's going to win this. So I ended up staying up to 3 a.m. on election day as I watched the map turn out like this. Trump managed to win Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, every single swing state, even the safe state of Wisconsin. And as I was sitting there, I was just wondering, what went wrong? Why were all these polls I believe so much in? How did they all get it wrong? How did Trump actually win this? And so as I delved deeper into the polls that all these articles are referencing, I noticed a few things that really should have been mentioned. First of all, the margin of error. Now, the margin of error represents the accuracy and range in which the prediction is actually correct. For example, let's say CNN said Clinton will win 50% of the vote, but there's a 5% chance of error. That means during the actual election day, her range will be 45 to 55. So a lot of these polls are actually far too close to call, as the margin of error is within Clinton's lead. And another thing, it's actually quite interesting, but if you consider these polls not as the chance of winning, but as the chance of winning the popular vote, and the amount of popular vote Clinton will get, it's actually very, very accurate. As of right now, Clinton has a 2.8 million popular vote lead, which equates to about 2%. 48 to 46, which is actually exactly what it is today. Now, I think it is very important that I explain to you guys, first of all, how a poll is conducted. So an organization like CNN, first, they create their list of questions, and they go ask a group of people. That's known as a sample. Now, if they wanted to know, let's say, the national opinion about something, ideally, they'd ask every single man, woman, child in the country, and voila, you got a perfect sample. But to ask everybody, that's expensive, it's slow, it's illogical. So what people would do is they get a representative sample, a smaller group of people that reflects the general population. For example, if a population is 50 million guys, 50 million girls, they'd ask 50 guys and 50 girls. Now the problem with predicting an election, however, is that not everybody that's eligible to vote will actually go out and vote. For example, our turnout rate currently is around 60%. So pollsters, they need to predict who will actually go out and vote. And this is where historically and presently has been the greatest amount of error. This 1948 election is known as the greatest upset in history. Perhaps it will change today. Previously, it was known as that. What happened was Dewey was projected to win the election by 5 to 15% by every single major polls for weeks leading up to the election. They were so confident that Dewey was going to win, they printed headlines early, distributed them that Dewey was going to win. And then on election day, Truman won by 4.4%. So the error that all these polls had previously was they got their sample wrong. The way they collected their sample was this. They flipped through a phone book, selected a random amount of people, asked them, and they were like, all right, Dewey's got this in the bag. But what they didn't realize was the only people who had a phone were the rich. So they completely cut off an entire demographic, the low and the middle income people. And similarly today, there was another issue. When pollsters project who's going to actually vote in order to determine who to sample, They looked at the 2008 and 2012 election, where there was about 60% turnout rate, and they made generalizations. For example, the white educated are the most likely to vote. People of color have started to turn out in increasing rates, and people who don't go vote are those with minimal education and poverty and in rural areas. The problem with this is that on election day, not only was the turnout lower, but the people of color, especially Latinos, didn't come out, and the rural vote increased substantially. Key thing about the rural vote is that it has become increasingly in the favor of Republicans. As you can see here, Democratic share of the rural votes has decreased by 11% since 2008, while Republican has increased. Here's a visual. On the right, you have population density, voting density, and essentially the polls missed a large chunk around here. It wasn't a massive amount, but it was enough to get Trump's lead and ultimately win the election. Now, another source of error that most polls had was in the way they conducted it, telephone interviews. Now, the way telephone interviews work is they first have their database of landlines, cell phones, and they call them, asking them questions like, who will you be voting for? What issues do you care about the most? But what comes from this live interviewer is something called interviewer bias. Is when there's a live interviewer, the respondent is much more likely to give what is known as the most socially acceptable answer. For example, if I walked up to you right now and asked you, are you racist? She's going to say no, even if she is, because that's the most socially acceptable answer. So if there's this perception, this misconception that all Trump supporters are racist, misogynist, bigots, they're not likely going to tell an interviewer that's right in front of them on the phone, yeah, I'm voting for Trump. So they're more likely to say, we're going to vote for another candidate, and then on election day, when they're private, would actually vote their way. And this is being deemed as a shy Trumper effect, where their Trump supporters were both less likely to actually participate in polls and less likely to answer, like, honestly. And this was actually most prevalent among women and people of color. And that was pretty interesting because 2 days before the election, there was a poll that said about 30-ish% of women will be voting for Trump. On election day, it was actually around 45%. I just like this color. But what it shows is something called confirmation bias. It's when you have an opinion, you have this thing already set in your mind, and when you go out to research, you're not looking for information that's arguing against you. You're looking for things that support you, and only things that support you. And when every single media outlet, when every single poll is saying, hey, Clinton's got this in the back, she's going to win this, there's no way Trump's going to win, polls are more likely to discard polls and just not report any of them that say Trump's going to win. Because what people have become convinced is that, hey, Clinton's basically got this in the back. So if we have something that says Trump's going to win, it's probably bad data. We probably messed something up. So this confirmation bias, this groupthink, ultimately led to pollsters who thoroughly just look for Clinton wins and not so much for popular opinion. And perhaps something very interesting that polls can't actually measure is enthusiasm and emotion. What Trump managed to do was he managed to energize a large group of people. They were fighting as the underdog. They were fighting for change, while Clinton, Democrats supporters, likely got a lot more relaxed. Right? It's like, okay, we got this already. We already won. We don't need to fight. And the thing about it is, you can't ask people, will you be going out to vote? Because again, the most socially acceptable answer is saying, yes, I'll be doing my civic duty. I will go out and vote. But again, the voter turnout rate is around 60-50%. So when you're emotional, when you're super invested into a candidacy, when you're super invested into the campaign, you're more likely to donate, you're more likely to go and help get out the vote, you're more likely to go door to door, you're more likely to drive people to polls. So polls were unable to see who were actually going to be voting. This was right after the election, November 8th. It's slightly updated, but the general turnout rate has been decreasing. And as of right now, it seems like Clinton, the Democratic turnout was actually decreased over time, while the Republican has increased. It's kind of attesting to the fact that there was more hype and energy among Trump supporters. And what I'm here to say isn't that you should just disregard all polls, right? Just because this was wrong. But what you need to do is you need to look further, and you need to understand the margin of error. You need to understand where the sampling is coming from. You kind of need to look past it. And so this issue of why Trump has actually won currently is a very big mystery. And I think we'll be actually thinking about it and trying to figure it out for the next 10 to 20 years, what actually happened. But I think the most important lesson of all from this election has been that you need to go out and vote, especially in a swing state like Pennsylvania. This election was decided by 80,000 voters. 44,000 in Pennsylvania, 20,000 in Wisconsin, 10,000 in Michigan. Those are the people who ultimately decided the election out of 136,500,000 voters. 0.00059% of the votes determined who would win. So if you want to make a change in the future, if you want the future to follow what you believe is the correct path, you need to go out and vote.